One Question is brought to you by Turnkey Search, a top industry search firm since 1996.
Scott, you've been at Pitt for just a little over a year now, and I actually want to backtrack your path to the seat there with the Panthers. And you have a unique background because, A, you've been a D2 athletic director, an FCS athletic director, an FBS athletic director, and then now, of course, a Power 5 athletic director. So there's an interesting story and some interesting lessons to learn within there, as well as you made a sequence of moves prior to Utah State that are mirrored by a couple of other athletic directors around the nation. So you were the athletic director at Eastern Washington, then you go to Washington as a senior leader, and then you end up at Utah State and now Pitt. And it's somewhat similar to Jeff Long's track of Michigan/Virginia Tech as a senior leader, Eastern Kentucky as the AD, Oklahoma as a senior leader, and then, interestingly enough, of course, you both have the Pitt tie. He spent time at Pitt, and now he's, of course, at Arkansas. So the general question to start is, what is the value for you in your current role of having experience at all four of those scholarship levels within the NCAA, and how does that help you have effective leadership today?
Well, Matt, I think the primary piece of that is that when you're entering the Division II ranks or FCS ranks in particular, there's a lot fewer bodies to work with, and so you learn really by you're forced to learn a lot about every unit and not just delegate, but literally really be on track. As an example, right in the middle of it, your fundraising is much more hands-on. Even your compliance at that lower level is much more hands-on. And so you really not only sharpen your saw as it relates to your knowledge, experience, and skills in those areas, but you become sympathetic in understanding what those folks do in their areas. So as you move up, you're less hands-on, but you certainly have a better picture of what they do every day.
How would you compare a normal day for you at Humboldt State way back in 97 through 99 to a normal day for you now? Are those vastly different, or do you structure them somewhat similarly and go into the day with a plan of execution?
Yeah, that's a great question. And a lot of the differences come not only in obviously the size of staff, but the number of people that care, the scrutiny, when you're scrutinized. I'll never forget taking the job at Humboldt State and talking to one of my mentors, Ted Leland, who I'd worked with at Pacific. He moved on to Stanford, and I told him about why I was going to take the job, and it had to do with 34 wanting to be an AD, and also family needs. Got to keep my wife at home, and our move put us in between two sets of grandparents. But he listened to me, and he sort of understood it. He said, all right, but besides, it'll be a great place to make mistakes. And I said, why is that? He said, because nobody will ever know. And I say that with a little bit of sarcasm, but the reality is there are a lot fewer eyeballs on the process, and what an unbelievable training ground. The parallels were this. Hey, my first year at Humboldt State, I dealt with conference realignment. I dealt with student fee initiative because we needed not only to find a new conference, we needed to find funding to travel in the conference. And then one of the unique things is we had to work on winning this faculty over on athletic grant and aid, because we're the last bastion of non-scholarship at that time, moving to scholarship D2, and had to win the faculty over on the fact that athletic grants and aid weren't bad things. If Stanford could do it and have good students, so could we. So parallels, and we all deal with similar things, whether it's conference realignment, student fees, budget, or whatnot. But the difference is the pressure, the amount of scrutiny as you move up, the amount of eyeballs on your product. Social media obviously plays a whole different role today than it did both in when I was obviously at Humboldt. It wasn't a factor at all, but even now it's a factor, but it's a much more of a factor at our level. So all eyes on what you do, and but you know, a lot of the difference is just the amount of eyeballs and the number of zeros you're dealing with in terms of your budget.
So walk me through then. You go from Humboldt to Eastern Washington and Cheney, of course, from '99 to '05. And at that point in your career, did it make sense to go to Washington to upgrade your profile in the pursuit of an FBS job? Was that a strategic move in that capacity? Because many people in our industry, there's no one path to the AD chair, as you know. But one traditional one is, you know, simply moving up levels of responsibility and titles, and you get into the deputy AD role, the executive associate role, and you become an AD at a FCS or a group of five, et cetera. But what was your mindset when you made the Eastern Washington to Washington move?
Yeah, so the move to Eastern Washington was a no-brainer. It moved us to my hometown of Spokane, Washington. Eastern Washington being just 15 miles away in Cheney, and a Division I job. So, you know, one of the things I had to be careful of at Humboldt State is being there too long, frankly, being a Division II program and not being pigeonholed. I was at Eastern 6 years, and I was literally at a bridesmaid for several FBS jobs, and everything being equal, I felt like because I hadn't been in the back then it was a BCS, hadn't been at a BCS school since Iowa State prior to Humboldt State, that was hurting me. The fact that I had matriculated from a Division II to FCS, and now it was trying to move up, I was losing out. Everything else being equal, I was losing out to senior associate ADs that were at Power Fives and folks like that. So yes, it was a strategic move, and I was blessed to have the opportunity to do it in the same state with somebody who I had great trust and affinity for. Todd Turner, although I had not worked on his staff in the past, we had served on some NCAA committees together and got to know each other very well. So Todd recruited me to that position, and for me, the move was specifically to sharpen my saw at the BCS Power 5 level and position myself over time for a solid FBS job. And fortunately, that's how it worked out. It doesn't always work out that way.
Yeah, and inevitably there is someone who is a senior associate AD at a Power 5 who right now is listening and is in the position of having been a bridesmaid. So what's the one piece of advice? I know you probably have many, but what's one key piece of advice you would say to this male or female administrator out there currently in that position on how to stay the track, and you kind of know the right situation is going to come along? What's that one thing you would relate to them?
Well, there will be an opportunity, and as I always say, look, be excellent where you are, because it has everything to do with where you'll be next. And if you're excellent where you are, you will eventually get there. Be patient and continue to do great work, and that's number one. And then certainly networking and having the right mentors and those things, connecting yourself with the search firms who are really seem to be part of the majority of searches at that level these days. The FCS level is a great level. Some of the best ADs in America are working at the FCS level, and one of the things that I think they have is, the FCS really sort of knows who they are. Most of them aren't aspiring to move up. They're who they are, and they're a long ways from, maybe that next level, and it's a good level. Now, if you're there a long time, it is difficult to move on, but I think it also depends, obviously those who aspire to be Power 5 ADs, being at a Power 5 institution is really important. But let me also say this, my having athletic director experience at the Division II level and at the Division, Eastern Washington hired me for two reasons, I believe. I mean, I was a right fit, but I had AD experience, but I was barely removed from a Power 5 program, Iowa State. So I got the job at Eastern Washington. Being at Eastern Washington 6 years, I distanced myself at that point probably from the Power Five, everything being equal. But my advice is to stay true to where you're at and continue to take on more responsibility, and that time will come for an FBS opportunity.
I thought it was interesting that you said about your time at Humboldt you didn't want to be there too long to get pigeonholed, but yet one of the things we commonly hear and read about around the industry when folks are the bridesmaid is, they wanted a sitting AD or they wanted AD experience, and you can't get that until you are an AD. So it's a really interesting, It's a really interesting balance there.
It is. There's a balance to it for sure.
You mentioned search firms. Has the role of search firms, and I'm talking generally, and of course you worked for Todd at Washington, and Todd has a robust practice, has a Missouri job on his plate right now, but has the role of search firms in, say, the past 2 decades changed in the industry, and if it has, how so?
Well, it's more prevalent. Absolutely. The idea of a robust, large committee, university personnel committee, and months and months of that, is not nearly as prevalent. Not that those committees don't exist, but a lot of times those committees exist with a search firm in place, and the search firms serve a valuable, as a valuable tool in really gauging interest in being able to cast a net that is wide and broad to understand whether it's a coach or an AD who's interested and then obviously the fit. But why have they become more prevalent? I'm not sure. I think part of it has to do with today's AD, the different profile. Certainly the profile has changed. Way back, it was a lot of times a retired coach, somebody that had been in that role moving over. There are many more demands in today's intercollegiate environment that the business enterprise, the law aspect of what we do, the compliance and fundraising elements to what we do, and so on. So I believe that search firms might be are better equipped to hone in on those folks than maybe the standard search committee that was there way back. Not that they don't still serve a purpose and aren't involved, but many times if you see a search committee, you also see a search firm alongside that.
And that's today's One Question, brought to you by Turnkey Search, a top industry search firm since 1996. One Question is designed to give D1 Ticker subscribers valuable insights on how executive leaders in college athletics think about key issues on their respective campuses, in their departments, or within their leagues and conferences. One Question is brought to you by Turnkey Search, a top industry search firm since 1996.